We went on a normal family trip. 8 people together, husband, wife, 4 kids, and grandparents. But we visited 5 islands, and after that, nothing was normal again. On the first island, something was watching us. On the second, something was following us. And on the last one, we realized we were never alone there. These are not stories. This is what we experienced, and we still can't explain it. One story, Pavelia Island. We were not supposed to go there. It started like a normal family trip. I was in Italy with my wife, our 4 kids, my parents, and my 2 younger sisters. We had been traveling for days, visiting crowded places, taking photos, eating street food. Everything felt alive and warm. But that morning, something changed. One of the locals mentioned an island. He said the name quietly, Pavelia. He didn't explain much, just said, "People don't go there anymore." That was enough to make us curious. I remember my father telling me we should avoid it. He said some places carry things that don't belong to us. I laughed it off. I thought he was just being old-fashioned. We hired a small private boat. The boat driver looked uncomfortable when I said the island's name. He kept asking, "Are you sure?" I said yes. The ride was quiet. As we got closer, the air felt different. I can't explain it properly, but it felt heavy, like something was pressing down on us. Even the kids stopped talking. My youngest son, who never stays quiet, just held my hand and stared at the island. When we stepped onto the shore, there was no sound. No birds, no wind, nothing. Just broken buildings and silence. We started walking inside. The ground felt uneven, like it had been disturbed many times. My mother kept looking around nervously. My wife stayed close to the kids. At first, it just felt abandoned. Then, it didn't. My daughter was the first to say something. She pointed toward an old building and whispered, "Someone is there." I looked. For a second, I thought I saw a figure near the doorway. It was very still, too still. I walked closer. There was no one there. But the door, it moved, slowly, like someone had just touched it. I told myself it was just the wind, but there was no wind. We kept moving, trying to stay together. I didn't want to scare anyone, so I stayed calm, but inside, something felt wrong. Not just fear, something deeper, like we were not alone. Then we found a spot near one of the ruined walls. The ground there looked darker, burnt. My father stopped and stared at it. He said very softly, "This is where they burned people." No one replied. Right after that, we heard it, a sound. At first, it was faint, like someone crying from far away. Then it got louder. My youngest daughter covered her ears and started crying. My wife tried to calm her down, but I could see fear in her eyes too. The sound didn't feel natural. It didn't echo like normal sound. It felt close, even when it wasn't. We decided to leave, immediately. As we turned back toward the shore, my older son grabbed my arm tightly. He didn't say anything. He just pointed behind me. I turned around, and I saw it. Something was standing between the buildings. But I knew one thing for sure. It was looking at us. No one spoke. No one moved for a second. Then my mother said, "Don't look at it." That's when everything broke. We started walking fast, then running. The kids were crying. My sisters were panicking. My father kept telling us not to turn around. But I did, just once. It was closer. Not walking, not running, just closer. We reached the boat almost without thinking. The driver was already waiting, like he knew something was wrong. We didn't explain anything. We just got in. As the boat moved away, I looked back one last time. It was still there, standing near the edge of the island, watching us leave. No movement, just watching. We never spoke about that day again, not as a family, not even once. But sometimes, late at night, my youngest daughter wakes up and says something that I can't forget. She says, "It didn't stay there." And honestly, sometimes I feel it too, like something followed us back and it's still watching.
Two-story North Sentinel Island.
We didn't plan to go that far. It was supposed to be a normal family trip, just something to explore the sea and nearby islands. I was with my wife, our 4 children, my parents, and my 2 sisters. 8 of us in total, all together, laughing, taking pictures, feeling like nothing in the world could go wrong. But sometimes curiosity is louder than fear. A local fisherman mentioned an island far away from the usual routes. He didn't say much, only that nobody goes near it and nobody comes back talking about it. I remember my father immediately saying we should ignore it. He looked serious in a way I had never seen before. But I made the mistake of thinking it was just superstition. We took the boat anyway. The journey took longer than expected. The water started changing color as we moved forward. Even the boat engine sounded different, like it was struggling. My wife asked me once if we should turn back, but I told her we were already too far to worry. I didn't know how wrong I was. As we got closer, the atmosphere completely changed. The sea became silent. No birds, no waves hitting hard, just a dull, heavy movement like the ocean itself was holding its breath. My youngest son stopped smiling. He held my hand and asked why everything felt quiet in a scary way. I had no answer. When we finally saw the island, it didn't look welcoming at all. It looked untouched, not like nature untouched, but like something that refuses to be touched. No signs of modern life, no sound, no movement, just trees standing too still. The boat stopped at a distance. The fisherman refused to go closer. He kept repeating that this was already too much. My father also insisted we turn back, but I made a decision I still regret thinking about. We stepped closer in a smaller boat. That's when I felt it for the first time, like we were being watched. Not from one direction, but everywhere at once. When we reached the shore, no one spoke. Even the kids stayed silent, which was unusual. The ground felt strange under our feet, like it had been walked on but never settled. We hadn't even gone far when my daughter suddenly stopped. She pointed into the forest. She said she saw people. At first I thought she was imagining things, but then I saw it too. Between the trees, shapes, not fully visible, not clear enough to describe properly, but definitely there. And they were not moving like normal people. They were watching us. My wife immediately pulled the kids closer. My mother started praying quietly. My sisters were whispering that we should leave right now. But before we could turn back, something happened that I will never forget. A sound came from the forest, not an animal sound, not wind. It sounded like a warning, short, sharp, directed at us. My father grabbed my arm and said, "We are not supposed to be here." That's when fear turned into panic. We started moving back quickly, almost running without realizing it. The deeper we went toward the shore, the more I felt that something was behind us. I didn't want to look back, but I did, and I saw movement, fast, hidden, following us between the trees, not attacking, just following, like they were waiting. We reached the boat in chaos. The fisherman saw our faces and immediately started the engine. He didn't ask questions, he just wanted to leave. As the boat moved away, I finally looked back again. This time, I saw more clearly. Figures standing at the edge of the forest, still, watching, not chasing us into the water, just watching us leave. My youngest daughter hasn't spoken about that day properly since then, but sometimes in her sleep, she says something that freezes me completely. She says, "They were not angry, they were warning us." And I still don't know what scares me more, what we saw or the feeling that they let us go on purpose. Three-story Isla de las Muñecas. We were 8 people in total. My wife, our 4 children, my parents, and my 2 sisters. It was supposed to be a light family trip in Mexico, something to relax and take pictures and forget normal life for a while. But I still remember the exact moment everything started to feel wrong. A local guide told us about a small island covered in old dolls. He laughed while saying it, like it was just a tourist story, but there was something in his tone that didn't feel like a joke. My father immediately said we should avoid it. He said some places are not made for visitors. I ignored him. We took the boat anyway. At first, everything looked normal. Calm water, green surroundings, birds flying in the distance. My kids were excited, especially my daughters. They were taking pictures and asking questions. But the closer we got, the quieter everything became. Even the water felt still. No birds, no wind, just silence. When the island finally appeared, it didn't look like a normal place at all. From far away, it looked like trees were hanging strange objects everywhere. As we got closer, I realized what those objects were. Dolls, hundreds of them, hanging from trees, nailed to branches, tied with ropes. Some were old and broken. Some had no eyes. Some looked like they had been burned by the sun for years. My youngest son asked why someone would hang toys like that. I didn't know what to answer. We stepped onto the island slowly. The ground felt soft, almost like it hadn't been walked on properly for a long time. My wife stayed close to the children. My mother kept saying prayers under her breath. Even my sisters, who usually laughed at everything, were completely silent. We hadn't even walked 10 minutes when my daughter suddenly stopped. She pointed at one of the dolls. She said, "That one is looking at me." At first, I thought it was just her imagination, but when I looked at it, I felt something strange. The doll was facing directly toward us, even though no one had touched it. Then another strange thing happened. A light wind passed through the trees, but only the dolls moved. Not the leaves, not the branches, just the dolls. My father whispered, "We should leave now." But before we could turn back, we heard something, a faint sound, like a child crying. It came from deeper inside the island. Everyone froze. My wife grabbed my arm tightly and said we should not go forward. My mother looked scared in a way I had never seen before. But the sound came again, and this time it felt closer. Against my better judgment, I stepped forward. I don't even know why. As we moved deeper, the number of dolls increased. They were everywhere, hanging, sitting, lying on the ground. Some were missing limbs, some were covered in dirt, some looked almost fresh, like they had been placed recently. Then I saw something that made my stomach drop. One of the dolls had real hair, not fake, real human hair. And its head slowly turned, just slightly, but enough for me to notice. That's when panic started spreading in the family. My kids started crying. My sister said we should run immediately. Even my father, who usually stayed calm, said we were not supposed to be there. We turned back fast, too fast, but as we ran, I noticed something behind us. The dolls were no longer still. Some of them were slightly swaying even when there was no wind, and one of them looked like it was facing us as we moved away. We reached the boat in panic. The guide saw our faces and didn't ask anything. He just started the engine immediately. No one spoke during the ride back. Everyone just stared at the water. But when I looked back at the island one last time, I saw something I can never explain properly. The dolls looked closer than before, as if they had moved to the edge, watching us leave. Even now, when I think about that day, I try to tell myself it was just my mind playing tricks, but my youngest daughter still refuses to sleep without lights on. And sometimes she says something that I cannot forget. She says, "They were not dolls. They were waiting for us to stay longer."
4 story, Hashima Island. We were 8 people in total. My wife, our 4 children, my parents, and my 2 sisters. It was a family trip in Japan, something we planned just to see different places and take memories back home. Nothing about it felt dangerous in the beginning, but that changed the moment we heard about the island. A local tour guide mentioned a place that no longer had residents. He said it used to be full of life once, but now it was completely abandoned. My father immediately told me to ignore it. He said abandoned places always carry stories that are better left untouched. I didn't listen. We took a small boat toward it. As we moved closer, I started noticing how the sea itself felt different. It wasn't rough or stormy, but it felt heavy, like the water had lost its energy. Even the sound of the boat engine felt too loud in that silence. My wife asked me once if we should turn back. I told her it was just an old place, nothing more. But I was wrong. When the island finally came into view, it didn't look like a normal abandoned place. It looked like a city frozen in time. Tall buildings standing too close together, windows staring like empty eyes, and no movement at all. Not even birds, not even insects, just stillness. We stepped onto the island slowly. The air felt strange immediately, like it hadn't been breathed in for years. My children stopped talking one by one. Even their footsteps sounded different on the ground, like the place was absorbing sound. My mother whispered prayers as we walked. We entered one of the buildings first. The inside was dark, but not completely empty. Old furniture was still there. Papers on the floor, rusted objects that looked like they were left in a hurry. My father said softly, "People didn't leave normally." That sentence stayed in my mind. We continued walking through narrow paths between buildings. The deeper we went, the more it felt like something was watching us from above. I kept looking up at windows, expecting to see someone, but I never did, at least not clearly. Then my daughter suddenly stopped walking. She pointed toward one of the buildings and said, "Someone is standing there." We all looked. At first, I saw nothing, but then for a split second, I thought I saw movement inside a broken window, a shape, still, watching. I blinked, and it was gone. My wife immediately said we should leave. My sisters agreed. Even my father, who wanted to explore earlier, now looked uncomfortable. But before we could turn back, something happened. A sound came from inside the buildings. Not loud, just a faint metallic echo, like something had fallen, slowly. Then another sound followed. Footsteps, but not ours. We all froze. My youngest son grabbed my hand so tightly that it hurt. He whispered that the sound was coming closer. I told myself it was just old structures collapsing, but the rhythm of the sound didn't feel natural. It felt intentional. We started moving back quickly, then faster, almost running, and that's when I noticed something that made my heart drop. The windows we passed were no longer empty. In some of them, I could swear there were shapes, standing, still, watching us leave. We didn't stop until we reached the boat. No one spoke. The guide saw our faces and immediately understood something was wrong. He started the engine without asking anything. As we moved away from the island, I finally allowed myself to look back. The buildings were still there, but now they felt closer somehow, like the island didn't want to let us go completely. Even now, when I think about that day, I can still hear that faint metallic sound in my mind.
And sometimes I wonder if those footsteps really stopped when we left, or if they just slowed down, waiting for the next visitors. 5-story Ramree Island. We were 8 people in total. My wife, our 4 children, my parents, and my 2 sisters. It was a family trip that was supposed to be simple, just exploring nature in a different country. Nothing about it felt dangerous when we started. But everything changed after we heard about the island. A local man told us about a place surrounded by mangroves and water, an island that had a very dark past. My father immediately told me not to go there. He said some places carry memories that are not meant to be revisited. But I ignored him. We took a small boat anyway. The journey toward the island felt longer than expected. The water was calm, but strangely silent. Even the usual sounds of nature felt missing. My children stopped playing after a while and just stared at the water. My wife asked me quietly if I was sure about this trip. I told her it was just history, nothing more. But I was wrong. When the island came into view, it looked like normal land from far away. But as we got closer, I noticed how empty it felt. Thick mangroves, muddy shores, and no visible life moving anywhere, not even birds. We stepped off the boat carefully. The ground was soft and difficult to walk on. My parents stayed close together. My wife held the younger kids' hands tightly. At first, everything was just silence, but that silence felt heavy, like it was covering something. We started walking deeper into the island. The air felt thick, like breathing had become harder without any reason. My father suddenly stopped and said, "We should not go further." But before we could respond, my daughter pointed toward the mangroves. She said she heard something moving. We all stopped. At first, I thought it was just animals, but then I heard it too, a slow movement in the water. Something dragging through mud and shallow water at the same time. My wife immediately pulled the children closer. Then it stopped. Complete silence again, but only for a few seconds. Then it started again, from another direction, closer. My heart started beating faster. My sisters said we should turn back immediately. Even my father now looked worried. We turned around, but as we started walking back, I noticed something strange. The sound was following us, not directly behind us, but around us, like something was circling slowly through the mangroves. My youngest son started crying quietly. My wife told him not to make noise, but the silence around us felt worse than any sound. Then came the moment I will never forget. From the mangroves, something moved faster than before. Not clearly visible, just motion, fast, heavy movement through water and mud. My father shouted that we should run, and we did. All 8 of us started running toward the boat area without even thinking. The ground was slippery, and it was hard to keep balance, but fear gave us strength. As we ran, I looked back once, and I saw something that made my entire body freeze for a second. Not a clear creature, not a shape I can describe properly, just movement in the mangroves, tracking us. Not attacking, just following, like it knew exactly where we were going. We reached the boat in panic. The boatman saw our faces and immediately started the engine without asking anything. No one spoke during the ride back. Everyone just stared at the water in silence. But I kept thinking about what I saw in the mangroves. It wasn't just danger. It felt like the island itself remembered everything that had ever happened there. And when I looked back one last time, I felt something I still cannot explain properly, like the water beneath us was still moving, even though nothing was there anymore. And sometimes now, I still hear that same dragging sound in my mind, even when I am far away from any river or sea.